Hello and welcome. I hope you're all doing well. So we are just going to begin our first section of the Greenbelt certification program. So we will begin it with giving a good definition to what is quality, right? Why it is important to us. Because the very reason why we are going through this course and you taking this certification is to definitely improve quality levels of your process, right? So how can you really do it? How can you define quality? That's very important. How do you measure quality, right? What's the right level of quality you should be aspiring for? These are the basic questions you will have in your mind, right? Let's try and answer that. So what's quality? How do you measure it? And what's the right level of quality? I should aspire for, right? So let's begin on that note. So I'm going to show you a very powerful slide where you always would wonder, I've done enough, but I really don't see a result, right? So to that question, here's the answer, right? You can see that in this particular slide, I'm talking about tangible and intangibles, right? Tangibles are the ones which you actually can see, which will be like a tip of the iceberg over the sea surface, over the sea level, right? So you will talk about warranties, scrap, rejections, reworks, customer escalations, so on and so forth, right? Which you actually can see with your naked eyes, which are the tangible ones. And most of your time and energy will be spent in firefighting basically to get this right. But you must understand that this was just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more underneath the ocean, right? So we need to figure out this. And this is really difficult for us to measure because these are the things which are generally hidden in a factory or a business process or in a services company. This is very difficult to estimate and measure. But this is where the real money is. When you improve your quality, you can definitely start off here, but we really need to dig deeper so that our lost sales, excessive inventory is what we're carrying, long cycle times. We are really not very aware of the kind of losses we incur or the kind of revenue we lose when these kind of issues kicks in, right? So in a nutshell, what I really intend to say is that of course we should start our journey by looking at the tip of the iceberg, which is actually visual, which is really visible to all of us, but certainly should not stop our journey here. We should always look at the intangibles. These are the additional cost of quality, right? So it's difficult, but it's nothing impossible in there, right? It may be impossible to measure, but if you really look at it, this is where the real meat is, and we will get superior output if you really focus on this particular area. And now let's see how we can address such problems, right? How we can get into the bottom of the ocean and see where we can start, how much can we move, how much can we cut, right? So that your process becomes superior in quality, and of course your financials look better. Now let's look at an important aspect of measure of quality and the correlation with cost of quality, right? So obviously this table is very self-explanatory. When you have low quality levels like your sigma level or your defects level, DPMO is nothing but defects per million opportunity. Number of defects you expect when you do 1 million transactions, right? So for a lower sigma process or a lower quality process, you will have always more defects, and that defects will actually go and hit your revenues and your cost, right? Obviously your profitability. So typically for a low quality process, if it is at this level, obviously I'm not really bothered about the cost of quality because I am totally running in loss and I will not be able to run that company anymore, right? But for a better levels or sigma levels, you see that for a 3 sigma level where I create around 66,807 defects when I make 1 million transactions, I will spend it somewhere between 25 to 40% of my total sales value for the cost of poor quality, which is a big number, right? So you're talking about this particular portion, right? Some of the things are really tangible, as we just discussed in our previous slide, but some of them are really intangible. But the success of your journey is basically figuring it out. What are those intangibles, and then how can I improve my quality and then reduce this cost, which is an unwanted cost. So when you are improving your sigma levels, you're reducing your defects, you see that the cost of poor quality ideally reduces, and then it drastically reduces. And if it's a world-class process which is at a Six Sigma level, you see that they spend less than 1% of the sales, which is good, and remaining money is going to their profits, right? So that's the trick of cost of quality. So this is how quality and cost is correlated. Now let's look at cost of quality as a concept. It should not be only focused on your end product, right? Your end product, before being a product, goes through a sequence of operations. We call it as process. So if you have a good process laid out, so that means your probability of creating a defect as an output will be very less, right? So cost of quality should start at your process level, right? So if you have a capable process, if you have a better process, your probability of having a world-class product is high. So when your probability of having a world-class product is high, the quality or cost of poor quality will be very less. So when you have very less cost of poor quality is when you will have superior margins, superior profitability in your company, right? And obviously a very enhanced customer satisfaction too, right? So you basically understand now everything is interlinked. We're talking about cost of poor quality. We're talking about the cost involved in it, and how that cost will generally eat up your revenues, eat up your cost margins or your profit margins, and then make you really challenged from a customer satisfaction or a customer experience point of view as well. So now let's look at how can we fight against these two things, right? Your eroding quality and your eroding customer experience. So for that to happen, right, you should always find a balance, right? Obviously, superior quality can be induced by doing certain activities. So we're talking about those activities here, right? One type of an activity which I can talk about is the prevention activities, right? So prevention typically talks about your planning, your training your resources, right? Having adequate control in your process and all of those things. But all of these things will attract cost, right? So the more, the better, right? When you do more prevention, you will have less quality issues. You will have better products. But when you're doing more, obviously you have to spend more here. So there's a lot of money going in. So again, appraisal is something like a quality check or a test or an inspection, what you do, right? Again, if you plan to do 100% inspection before delivery, obviously you will arrest all the defects, at least even before getting to the customer, right? But again, that's cost. So that's actually the cost which will eat away your profits, right? So external failures and internal failures are failures, right? So failures before the delivery are called as internal failures. That means you are having a lot of scrap or a rework in the process, right? You figure it out either using appraisal or, obviously by using appraisal, you figure it out, and then you will either scrap it or rework it before giving to the customer. So that's also eating away your margins. And then external failures are really terrible, where you couldn't really figure it out even in your appraisal. It went to your customer, and the customer is unhappy about your solution or your product, and he's coming back with an escalation, right? So the warranty cost, the complaint cost, the return item cost, and all of those things are actually eroding, right, your profit margins, and obviously significantly pulling down your customer experience in the process. So you see that in a low maturity process, you will spend a lot of money in terms of doing prevention and appraisals, right? But again, the cost of failures also will be more, because if you really don't have a mature process, no matter how much of a prevention you do, an appraisal you do, you obviously will incur more cost of poor quality of failure costs. But when your quality maturity increases, you get to see that it peaks. But again, your appraisal and the prevention cost also goes down. So will be your failure cost, right? Because you will have better processes, you will have better appraisal systems in place, you may have fixed a lot of inherent issues in your problems, in your process, and that will actually start yielding you results. And obviously, when the maturity or the quality maturity of your process increases, your prevention cost comes down, your appraisal cost comes down, and obviously will so will be your failure cost. And this is an ideal solution, right, where you have the maximum maturity so that I can really have all my costs down and then my failure cost down. But again, there's a catch to it, right? So there's a catch to it. Let's look at this particular diagram, right? So initially, when you have a very inferior process quality levels, you, as we have discussed, your failure costs will be really high, and your costs for appraisal and prevention will be very less, because you really will not have such functions there, because you do not really have a quality level, or you have a very inferior quality level. So you don't have prevention activities, you don't have appraisal activities. Obviously that cost will be less, but your failure cost will be really, really high, and the total cost, you see that it will be really, really high. But as and when you actually mature in your quality levels, you slightly increase your prevention cost, because you put the quality teams there, you will put a training team, people will start training them, right? But this is endless, right? You can add more and more muscles to those two functions, and then they add up to the cost simultaneously. But when you add up to the cost, your quality levels also goes high. When the quality level goes high, obviously your failure cost will go down. But again, this will have an upside down effect, where one cost is going down, the other cost is coming up. It's a similar behavior here. So in either of the extremes of your total cost, a very low quality or an inferior process is going to have a lot of cost of ownership, right? A total cost of operations will be really high. So will be when you want to maintain a high quality level process by investing a lot of money in terms of prevention and appraisals. So we need to have this spot identified in the bathtub curve where I have got the minimum cost possible whatsoever, right? So for that you need to have a perfect balance. We need to strike a balance between the failure cost and the prevention cost, and that's the whole idea, right, of the management, is to identify this optimal level of quality and optimal level of crossing prevention cost and failure cost, so that I will have the minimum value of my total cost of ownership, right? So that's typically on quality. I hope that you understood what is quality, how will it impact your revenues, how will it impact your profit margins, how will it impact your customer experience, and how you can measure it, and what should be the right level of quality, what you should be maintaining, and most importantly, the tangible and the intangibles, which we spoke about, is very, very critical. You should not stop your journey by just attaining what is possible at the tip of the iceberg. We should always deep dive and find out more opportunities to reduce costs, increase customer experience, and to have a superior quality process. Okay, so I'll see you soon in the next lecture. I hope that you understood this. I'll leave all the notes at the article section, and you may refer to those notes if you are in doubt. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next lecture.